Hello everyone, welcome to GamerSlice and thanks for watching our E3 coverage. I'm Jared and I'm going to talk about Ubisoft's 2016 E3 press conference, which was quite frankly not quite a train wreck. But let's just say that a good label to put on this conference would be WTF. Uh, this was quite cringeworthy through many parts of the conference, and I'll explain why. But first of all, I gotta say, I came over directly from the PC Gaming Show. I don't plan on doing. I might do a video on the PC Gaming Show, but if I do, it'll be a little bit later on down the line. But I came directly from there, where they seem to have. Well, first of all, Ubisoft started early, so I actually turns out I looked at it afterwards. I only missed like the first 15 seconds of the conference, but I came in directly from the PC Gaming Show where they were doing actually quite a good job with a good focus on the games of the PC Gaming Show and a lot of the innovations and new, like they showed the new graphics cards for like a budget PC and all that stuff, and they were focusing a lot on like just really talking with the developers and seeing what was coming next. I think they handled the PC Gaming Show very well, although it did have a quite a bit of a different vibe than the previous press conferences, but I think it was very good. That being said, I came over to Ubisoft's and my first reaction was what the fuck is going on? And they opened the show with Just Dance, and they had Supersonic Man and from Queen playing, and they're dancing, and oh, it was just a disaster. I was face palming. I was doing whatever to express the fact that I was bewildered that Ubisoft would do this. But of course they always do something crazy. But I figured, oh, this could not be the opening, but it was. And of course, Aisha Taylor was hosting this press conference again. And by the way, guys, it's probably going to be a long video because Ubisoft's press conference was extremely long. It was the longest press conference I have ever watched, and I have watched E3 press conferences for the last 3 years, every single one of them. This was the longest by far. It was over 2 hours. Yeah! And as I said, about half of it was not very good, so this was a pain to watch through. You can already tell this is with no doubt, since Sony's the only one left, they could not possibly fuck their conference up as bad as Ubisoft did. Okay, I gotta say, it wasn't a complete disaster, but it was very very close to that. So Isha Twain comes on stage and she says, when you see a dancing bird and a whatever, dancing squirrel, whatever the heck it is, you know you're at a Ubisoft press conference. And sad to say, but that's true. Or at least it seems to be true from here on out. Now, what I'm about to say next adds insult to injury, or rather, what they said next adds insult to injury, because throughout many parts of the conference, but mostly this part, Ubisoft had terrible timing. Right after this whacked up laughing stock, a circus act, that's pretty much what it was, they decide to acknowledge the Orlando incident, and they said, we're sorry for all the lives that are lost, which is a very serious thing, but could you have picked any worse of a time within your conference? I don't think you could have. This was the worst possible time to talk about this. So, from the get-go, we've got this very confused Ubisoft, shall we say. And I'm confused just looking back on it. I don't even know. I'm running way too long here. I don't know how to talk about it. But anyways, let's just get into the games, because it took them a very long time to really focus on that as well. Oh, and some joke about wood. What? A penis joke of some kind, I guess. I think Aisha Taylor said she's gonna get some wood. That's what it seemed. Go back and watch it for yourself. That was another what the fuck moment. I just don't ask me. But no, don't watch it. If you're gonna watch it, just watch the first like 10 minutes of it, max. After you watch this video or somebody else's video, if you have not already, do not subject yourself to this 2 hours of a press conference of a very mixed, very confusing. Just don't put yourself through it. Now, the first game they showed off, which is the game that I was actually looking quite forward to after them revealing it last year, and it's coming out March 7th, Ghost Recon Wildlands. Now, in this gameplay demo, first they showed off a trailer, which gave us a little bit of insight into the story, or rather the plot of the game, which I think is pretty good. But they showed off a gameplay demo here, and They had to do their Ubisoft thing, their classic Ubisoft thing, where they have this scripted voice like commentary thing between the players, since it's co-op, like just like the Division. If you remember the Division at E3 in the past, they did the same damn thing. And with the Division, I could tolerate it somewhat because it was somewhat casual, and I was like, okay, I get that no players are actually gonna play like this, but it was okay. But with this one, like at this point, I'm just getting sick and tired of Ubisoft. It's like, don't do this. Nobody talks like that when they're playing online. But this one, it was just they were far too serious. Like the voice actors were like they acted like they were real military personnel. And in fact, I don't even think real military personnel are that serious about all that. They probably use more casual language occasionally than what they were using in this gameplay demo. So with that being said, their demo is going to be very scripted, and of course it was. And they purposely stealthed their way through the whole thing with silencers and whatnot. And then at the last moment, when they're about to get to their target that they need to apprehend, of course, one of the guys gets spotted right at the last moment, and he takes I think he even took a suppressor off his gun ahead of time or whatever, and they go loud, no suppressors or whatever, but it was totally intentional. And then they chase the target and everything, and then they're chasing him eventually, and two of the guys are on a motorcycle, one of them going to a helicopter, the other guy is chasing the vehicle, and at one point he bails off his motorcycle at like 40 or 50 miles an hour, and lands perfectly on his feet, no roll, no anything. I don't know. That's just weird. It's just like totally unrealistic. But I gotta say, one of the things that was super clear throughout this demo was that the scouting mechanic is very much like Future Soldiers in the way, like with the drone and everything, but it's not really evolved, and I think this, a lot of Ubisoft games have this whole scouting thing in it, whether it be from an actual player perspective or from a drone or whatnot, cameras like in Watch Dogs. But also this chase was very reminiscent of Watch Dogs. Like when the guy's riding the motorcycle, it looks almost exactly like Watch Dogs motorcycle stuff. So I'm just feeling like Ubisoft is going down this route where their games are all very, very similar, and I'll talk about that later and share my thoughts more clearly on that. But Ghost Recon Wildlands, still something I'm looking into, but it's definitely like with the Division. Up until the beta, I was actually quite hyped for that game, and then I played the beta, and I'm like, oh, this is not exactly what I thought. And then it kind of, my hype for that game went way down because of the fact that I now know visually from the Division, I know what I'm seeing on screen. Like, even without playing it, I know Ghost Recon Wildlands is doing the same thing. And Future Soldiers, if they would make it more like Future Soldiers, that would be cool. And with Ghost Recon, hey, don't get me wrong, I like the open world feel, but they seem to have like taken pretty much all the tactics out of it, and it's now, especially during the chase, it's a military Grand Theft Auto with 4-player co-op. That's all it is. Enough said there. So, but still looking into it, it might be pretty cool. From what they're showing me, I'm not too impressed. But with this demo, as I said, comparing it to Division and whatever, I think I know exactly what it's gonna be. I actually feel like I saw the real game this time. So this is one of the few games that Ubisoft, you can't fool me with it. You can't fool me with this. I've actually seen your real game from what you showed me, and I'm much more disinterested in it now. Now what's next? Oh boy, this made me laugh. This was pretty good. In fact, this next part was, quite frankly, probably the best part of the conference. Mainly because of the game, but I think a lot of it just because of what they did. They created this whole trailer, and I couldn't figure out exactly what it was, and it was very similar to the Division. It was like, oh, the world is destabilized, and it's like modern stuff, and they have all the kind of like pictures on the screen with like the electronic stuff kind of glitching out a bit or whatever. So it's all that, and I think they showed like the Lincoln Memorial and whatnot, and America like, oh, the world's gonna go into a panic or a crisis or whatever, and we're like, oh, what game could this be? Probably a new IP, but just classic Ubisoft thing. And then, what do you know? South Park! Yeah! South Park! I did not see this coming. Ubisoft basically did a parody of their own games, of their own trailers. So, at least this gives me hope that Ubisoft, most likely it's just because they formulate their games so much and they know they manage to sell, so they just do it. But I'm pretty sure they're aware of exactly what they're doing. So they're aware that they're making very repetitive games. They're aware that they're making games that the more demanding, more discerned gamer is becoming less and less interested in. So I have hope for them in the future. So if the time comes where their sales go down enough that they need to improve their games, they can do it, I think. They can be the Ubisoft that they used to be. But for right now, they're going with what they're sold. So yeah, but they parody their own trailers, so that they do understand themselves is the point. But yes, it's South Park, the fractured butthole. Yes. Hey, I did not laugh when I said that. Okay, everybody else laughs. I did not laugh when I said South Park, the fractured butthole. Now we saw some of this game last year, just basically a teaser trailer for it, but it's going definitely down the superhero route, and they still seem to be doing it right and doing the South Park license justice. Now, as vulgar as South Park can be at times, and as crude and definitely it's definitely not up my alley as much. I've watched some of South Park, but sometimes gets a little bit, it goes a little bit too far. But as far as they go with it, South Park is also very clever, both in the way that they take words literally. It's very much like some of the clever humor from like old, like something like the Dick Van Dyke shows, like the really good comedy shows back in the day. One of the specific instances of their cleverness is when they actually parody the business of superhero movies, the business model leading up. Like this superhero has their movie, this superhero has their movie, and then they join in this movie and it leads to this, and they do a really good job of that. And the whole story around this South Park game actually seems pretty cool. One of the other things they're doing, they're not just making a good and very cleverly written story that complements South Park, they're actually evolving the gameplay as well. They're evolving turn-based combat as a whole in a strategy game, and they're allowing you to, attack somebody and then like have them interact, or like when you attack them, you push them into something in the environment, and then the thing in the environment can do extra damage. So they're taking their combat to the next level, and as I said, I think it's just more than evolving their own game. They're evolving, I think, the potentially the way that turn-based strategy games will be thought of in the future, which is quite an insane thing to think of coming from a game like South Park. But if you pre-order the game, you can get the Stick of Truth for free. So if you're a South Park fan and you've never played Stick of Truth, then this is a good way to get in. You can play both of them. Now, as I mentioned before in Microsoft conference, but Ubisoft talked about it here, is the Division Underground. There's going to be 3 exclusive outfits from other Ubisoft licenses. One from Ghost Recon, I believe, or is it Wildlands? I think it was from Ghost Recon Wildlands. Then they're going to have the Rainbow Six Siege guy, and then Adam Fisher, which is kind of cool, but I don't know. It's like if everybody has it, like what's the point? But so special. Skins. Um, there's survival as well, which is a new mode or something that they're adding. Not so clear what it is, except for that the scavenging elements of the game are kind of coming into play here. But before there was no really huge necessity to scavenge or whatever, so it just seems like it's kind of tossed in. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to fit the game to me. But I think just just with the way the game is designed, it just doesn't really make sense. That's coming out June 28th on Xbox and PC, and then it's coming out later on August 2nd on the PS4. So this is like a whole month exclusive for the Xbox and PC. Now, the next part is where Ubisoft branches into VR, and what they're doing with VR is actually not that bad. This is one of the also better, but still kind of strangely awkward, weird parts of the conference. So they showed off 2 VR games. One of them is a new one called Eagle Flight VR. It's a very unusual concept, but I think I like it. It's basically you are a bird, you have to capture some sort of a, like food or whatever, whether it be an animal or whatever. I think they have you capturing a rabbit at one point, but it's basically bird, like objective based, team based gameplay like basketball or football or soccer, pretty much get it to the other goal. But there seems to be these very open levels, and you fly as a bird in VR. And this is supported on Oculus. And here's the thing, though, with other like what Project Morpheus is going to have in HTC Vive, a lot of those games actually have where you could map out the room or whatever. So they actually are games that can only work in VR. For the most part, or the where they're planning on going, those ideas can only work in VR. Whereas Oculus is just another way to play it. It's not so much required, and this is very much with this game. This game you could easily just play with a control in your hand on a normal TV. Um, and VR almost seems to, in some ways, this just from a spectator's point of view, it seems to kind of make the game suffer. But it's very cool idea though, and I think with VR it might become more of a premium title than it would have been if it wasn't in VR. But the death animation I think needs some work. It's very just kind of blacks out. It seems like it blacks out too early. You're not really sure what happened. But as I said, it doesn't necessarily really need VR though. But kind of an interesting game as well. Also, coming to VR is Star Trek Bridge Crew, which is actually quite cool. Unfortunately, this game could run into some huge issues because all your friends are going to have a VR headset to play this. I mean, yes, theoretically they're probably going to have network matchmaking and ability to play with other people somewhere else, but it's not quite as fun if you can't play with your friends. And obviously, if you're sitting in one room, you're not going to have like 5 headsets connected to the same PC or the same PS4. So really, to get the full experience here, you're going to have to, all your friends are going to have to, or at least several of your friends are going to have a VR headset, and you're going to have to play it together, which can be very spendy, and not everybody has the ability to do so. But nonetheless, it looks really cool for a lot of Star Trek fans. It fulfills their fantasy of being able to, like I'm gonna pilot. I'm gonna be part of the crew of this spacecraft or the Enterprise or whatever. There's probably multiple spacecraft that you can choose from. Other than the South Park section of the conference, the next section here, where they showed off more of For Honor, which debuted last year at E3, this was probably the best part of the conference, and for me personally, I think it was the best part. I gotta say, Jason Vandenberg, who's the guy who he's got the awesome beard and he's got the cane. He walks out. He's got such a presence. He's very good at presenting. He looks just so awesome in his voice. I think he even does the voice for the trailer for For Honor. But if the whole conference could just be him, that like you wouldn't get any of this cringe-worthy stuff from Ubisoft. That would be freaking awesome because I was very impressed with this guy last year. I was like, who is this guy? This is awesome. But he's back presenting For Honor. And yeah, he's awesome. Can't say more about it. But For Honors is coming February 14th, so that's on Valentine's Day there. Now, as we know, For Honor has a primary focus on the multiplayer component of the game, but there's actually going to be a single-player campaign here. Now, part of me thinks that maybe they're just like checking off something on a checklist just to say they have a single-player campaign, because from what I can tell as part of it, it seems like it's going to be very short. There's probably only going to be like one main mission. It's almost going to be more of a tutorial in a way, or like a practice, just to kind of practice the combat more in the way I see it. So there's probably going to be like one mission for each faction, and or maybe one mission for each faction battling each of the other factions. So there might be a little more to it. But from what I can tell, it seems fairly short, and it seems like the campaign will probably be really easy because none of the enemies look like, especially the minions, they're like one-hit kills. And I actually I'm doing this video a little bit later than I originally planned, and I actually saw them show off some additional gameplay. From what I can tell, the game's going to be super easy because there's a lot of places that are kind of like serve as save points, but are also like refill your health. And you can do that a lot in the level. So to me, it just seems like it's going to be way too easy, very much tacked on. But we'll have to wait and see. But I have my doubts about whether the single player portion is actually going to be worth your time. So if you're buying it, you better really like the idea of the multiplayer and battling people online with that combat system, because that's where the game is really strong. So I think of the campaign pretty much as skirmishes rather than a fully fledged single-player campaign. Now, one of the smaller in-house projects we saw last year from Ubisoft was Grow Home, which some of you, especially if you have PlayStation Plus, have probably played this game because it was free. It was the first PlayStation Plus vote to play, and of course we've seen games such as Valiant Hearts from them. So it's very nice that Ubisoft also lets these kind of like indie-like games. They're not really indie developers, but the games are very similar to the types of games that indie developers made. So it's very nice to see Ubisoft letting these smaller in-house projects work. But Grow Home is getting a sequel called Grow Up. And there's not really much to say about it, but you're not guided as much by Mom, which was, if you played the game, she's like the main computer thing, whatever you're supposed to reach in the sky. And they seem to have evolved the game a little bit more, but it's mostly seems like it's a lot more of the same thing. So if that was a game that really struck your fancy, then Grow Up is also coming out sometime probably this year as well. Now, part of the more cringe-worthy stuff from Ubisoft, Aisha Taylor made fun of the guy's voice, partly when he stuttered at one point, when he was presenting Grow Up. But the enter to the next thing they showed off. She should have made fun of this guy's voice, because this guy had a super heavy lisp, and it was like, whoa! I mean, it was like super strong. It was almost like you thought the guy had a speech impediment. But anyways, aside from the guy's voice, that was totally fine. But what happened next was extremely weird. Two guys came out, wearing these like same outfits. They're colorful, red, orange, mixed, kind of like tie-dye, but only with red and orange. And I had no clue what they were showing off, but apparently they got a retro 80s version of Trials Fusion coming out. It's called Trials of the Blood Dragon, and it's actually out now, in fact. As far as the presentation of that, very, very weird. Very weird and unnecessary, but just a reskin of a Trials game, from what I can tell. They also had, I believe it's the director? I think it was the director of the Assassin's Creed movie come out, and they talked about it, but didn't really learn anything new from the movie. Although, I don't know, we did see a little bit more footage from it, but not really anything new. I do think it maybe seems a bit more promising. Although there may be less anime sequences in the movie than we originally thought, I have more hope for them that they're going to be good. Maybe, but for the most part, wasn't really worth much, for them to bring the guy out there to talk about it. Now, you would expect Watch Dogs 2 to be the last game they showed, since, big sequel to the third best-selling game of all time, to my knowledge. But Watch Dogs 2 was not the last game. But they did show it off second to last. It's coming out November 15. Of course, we know Watch Dogs 2 takes place in San Francisco. There's a new character, which I don't really care for, because he's got, like, the hipster glasses or whatever. Just not the type of personality that I like, although he may be better than Aiden Pierce. His name, I believe, is Marcus. His first name is Marcus. I think it's Marcus Aloué, whatever. And you're part of DedSec this time. So that is the aspect of this game, story-wise, that I'm most interested to look into. Is we're gonna get to know more about DedSec, the hacker group from the first game. Even though they did seem to add, some new things in Watch Dogs 2, and changes a bit from the first Watch Dogs. So just overall, watching this and watching Ghost Recon Wildlands and all this, it really makes you realize how similar all Ubisoft games are. It's like they're using the same formula for everything. Eventually, people are going to get tired of it. People are already getting sick of it. And Ubisoft is not the company that they used to be. Back in the days when they started putting out games in the Assassin's Creed franchise, when they were putting out the old Ghost Recons, when they put out like Far Cry 2 and all that, and Call of War is Bound in Blood, and all those good games in the PS3 generation, they were great. But coming into this most recent generation, even a little bit into the PS3 days, I mean, I gotta say, like, Ubisoft has, I believe, lost their way. But the mass market still, mass audience still buys the games. So it seems like unless people stop buying their games as much, they're not going to do anything about it. They're not going to make any cool new games. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, Ubisoft, though, some of these games may be okay, but they seem to be playing it very safe, and it's very formulaic, and frankly, it's getting quite old now. It's like, it used to be the joke that where Ubisoft was obsessed with towers, and that still is the case, but nowadays it's more than a joke. It's not just a joke, it expands to pretty much their entire game design through pretty much every single game they create now, with the exception of maybe like For Honor or something. But yeah, it's quite disappointing. But yeah, the one of the other hopes that I do have though for Watch Dogs 2 maybe is that because it seems to be kind of like a buddy game. I'm not really sure how I like that, considering his buddy. I don't really think he looks kind of stupid, but he kind of looks cool if he was in a post-apocalyptic setting, but in the setting of Watch Dogs 2 in San Francisco, he just looks like a wacky person from San Francisco. Maybe more like somebody crazy person from Portland. But I don't know. That might bring some depth to the game with the buddy system, or the buddy being like a buddy game. There might be some character development in there. But they also said that they hope Watch Dogs will be the next video game blockbuster movie. All I got for them is a big F you if you think that, because there is no way that's going to be a big. I mean, frankly, actually, now that I think about it, Watch Dogs could maybe be better as a movie, but I don't think it's gonna be. It's not gonna be a big blockbuster movie. Like, I can guarantee you, if they do it, like, it might be a decent video game movie, but it's not gonna be like the one that proves that video game movies can be good. Heck no. If anything, it'll do the opposite, I believe. That's just my belief about it. Although I would kind of like to see it get made into the movie, just to see on which front the Watch Dogs premise is better. And of course, Watch Dogs 2 is also going to have for PS4 30-day timed exclusive DLC. Yeah, not not really great on Ubisoft's part. Screw you, Ubisoft. And the last game that Ubisoft showed was a new IP, which may seem to contradict what I just said before when I was talking about Watch Dogs 2 and kind of Ubisoft, how they're making all their games the same. But it's coming out this December. It's actually an action sports game, and it goes by the name of Steep. Very similar to SSX. So it's pretty much all. When I say action sports, it's not like any motocross stuff or skateboarding or like any X Games type of material. But well, some of it. But it seems to be mainly off course. Like there's no courses. It's just like freestyle snow sports for the most part. So we got like some wingsuit stuff. We got snowboarding, skiing, that kind of stuff with an open world. And this is made by Ubisoft Annecy. And I think the premise of the game looked kind of cool. However, the part where I think this game is really gonna have a difficult time getting people's attention is because they're going for this whole social aspect of the game. And I think it's really promoting this false sense of like a social networking within games in general. But it's like where you can drop in, drop out, play with your friends, do these races and everything, or just meet up with random people and do a race and everything. But I don't really think it's gonna be able to work that well. I think going to the more traditional form of matchmaking might be okay. Now with the way Watch Dogs 2 and Watch Dogs had their multiplayer, that worked fine. But with this game with Steep, it just doesn't seem like this whole social aspect is going to work out as well. They need to put more thought into it. There needs to be some sort of better system because I just don't think. Maybe I might be wrong. I could be very wrong about this game, but to me it just doesn't seem like it's going to work. And what's funny too is like there's skiing or snowboarding down a hill or whatever. Well, at one point they were doing wingsuits and his friend was right up to the side, and boom, crashes into the snow. He's like, ah! Yeah, but he didn't do anything about it. Another time they were like skiing or snowboarding, his friend crashed, and then he finished the track like 5 seconds later. He could have easily went to help his friend, but nope. Of course, that's just a game thing, but you don't really need to help him. But I thought that was kind of funny. But I gotta say, it's also quite humorous that they saved this game for last because yes, it's a new IP, but it just doesn't seem to have mass appeal, and this is part of their poor placement aside from at the beginning when they talked about Orlando. This was just poor placement overall with some of these games in the conference, especially with this one. They should have introduced this one, I believe, further towards the beginning because I just don't think a lot of people are going to be interested in this game, and I think this game is fairly raw for what it is, and maybe needs some more thought put into it. But it doesn't seem like a bad game, but seriously, come on. You could have put something better in its place. Overall, I think Ubisoft has kind of been going downhill at this point. I think this press conference really does prove it. And as I said, it was 2 hours, and afterwards I had a headache, and I could have got some of these videos out earlier, probably even a whole day later than I will end up getting them out. But because of Ubisoft's press conference, I got pretty tired out, and I couldn't do anything between theirs and Sony's. Oh, and did I mention that this is Ubisoft's 30th anniversary? Well, you never would have guessed from this press conference, because for the most part, it was, well, not a complete disaster. It was very close to being that. But it was most certainly Ubisoft's worst press conference they've ever done, to my knowledge, at least within the past 3 years. Now to score this, I'm even depressed after making this video, just like I was after the conference, because things are not looking good for Ubisoft. And Ubisoft used to be one of my favorite game developers, but now they've just they got a good hit. Some both either critically and sales wise here and there, but I mean sales wise they're actually still doing really good. But they got a critically acclaimed game here and there, or just one that gets a lot of awards. But they're just not the same as the developer that they used to be. So overall, to rank this press conference, I have to give Ubisoft probably a C plus on this one. So I mean, I'm not gonna make the distinction between C plus, C minus, or whatever. C plus, whatever, some sort of a C. They were the worst this year. I don't know much to say. I'm tired about it. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Make sure to watch our other E3 stuff. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to check us out. And if you like what you see here, be sure to subscribe. Okay, thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video. And I pray that I will never have to watch another conference like that ever again.